On behalf of the San Diego Maritime Museum and the Morro Bay Maritime Museum, we'd like to welcome you to the sailing ship San Salvador. This is a modern-day reproduction put together through the efforts of many volunteers and contributions that totaled $12,800,000. It was built between 2011 and 2016. The idea for this, to recreate it, goes back at least 10, maybe as many as 15 years. The flag is that of the flag of Burgundy above you. It is a modern-day reproduction with two 280 horsepower motors. So it's not only the 4,160 square feet of sail, it's also the modern technology as well. It is a Coast Guard approved vessel for sailing on the ocean blue, and its maiden voyage here, the Pacific Heritage Voyage, was up to Monterey, down to San Simeon Bay, here at Morro Bay. Then they'll go south to Ventura, out to the Channel Islands, before returning to home port in San Diego. On the aft portion of the ship, most of our visitors expect to find a wheel, a steering wheel. There was no wheel in the time of Cabrillo. There was what was called a whipstaff. The whipstaff was connected to the rudder and could steer the ship to port or to starboard, depending on what the pilot and the captain general wanted. The private cabin of the captain was in the aft portion of the ship, as were accommodations for some of the more prestigious visitors. Other members of the crew, the soldiers, other members of the indigenous peoples, the few Africans that were on board, the Portuguese and the Spanish, would have slept on the deck at 75 feet in length. And the food that was served proportionately was beef or meat of some kind. There was dried fish. There was cheese served at least 3 times a month. On the forward deck, in the forward compartment of the San Salvador, sits the cooking stove, which is a metal box filled with sand where bits of charcoal and wood could be used. That's where all food was prepared. Forward of the cooking area is basically hygiene, the potty in that sense. And that's where the sailors and the crew, the other members of the crew, the soldiers, would make their deposits into the sea.
All right, everyone. Well, welcome aboard the San Salvador. You are aboard a 16th century replica Spanish galleon. My name's Jamie. I'm your replica 16th century Spanish sailor, a marinero. Well, you're aboard our ship, and this is our inaugural voyage. Basically, it took our Maritime Museum of San Diego about 5 years for construction of this ship, and then it basically got the AOK certified 2016 Coast Guard ship pretty much just over a month ago. So brand new. And because it's a brand new 2016 ship, you need brand new stuff. You need engines, you need modern navigation, you need quite a lot of things for safety procedures to be able to take a ship for any passengers or for anyone for that matter up the coast, just like we have here. So you're gonna see throughout the ship some 2016, some modern amenities on there. Like I said, I myself is just gonna have some modern, and I have some silly flip-flops on. So you gotta bear with me as well and some of my modern aspects I have about for me. So what we're gonna be doing is, if we wanted to go back in time, back to 1542 when this ship would have set sail, Juan Cabrillo, the captain of this ship, left Barra de Navidad, modern Mexico, just off the western coast of Mexico, to make that voyage of exploration up north. The ship wasn't built in Spain. Spain established a shipyard in Guatemala, well, let's say modern day Guatemala, where this ship and about a dozen others were built. If we went back in time to the 16th century, everything you see around you, pretty much 85 to 90% wouldn't exist. Cars, these boats here, buildings, non-native trees, none of that's there. But what we're doing is that when you're aboard this ship, what would have existed, what you see here. Your look on this ship is essentially what it would have been looking like in the 16th century. So what you have aboard is you'd have sailors, marineros like me, slaves. Where we are right now, this is where we would live. We'd sleep right on the deck, eat on the deck. This would be our home right here. But there'd be other people aboard because there might have been anywhere from, let's say, 60 to 90 people on this, what might be, they're thinking maybe 3 years on this. And what you see is what you get. That's it. Below, just cargo, provisions, maybe a horse. But there wouldn't have been any areas below decks to live. Now in 2016, there's bunks. You'll see bunks in there that looks like the same thing below, but that's where our crew, that's where we're sleeping. So I'm not asking to go into your house right now and go into your room. So don't ask me if you can go into mine. So it's just off limits below, but there's nothing really much. But if you want to ask what might be in some of the other areas, modern ones, the engine room would be below in that hatch. That one, the last hatch brings you down into our modern galley. But let's just bring us back to what we're doing in the 16th century. That's life. That's going to be your life here, pretty much stuck on the ship. Other than those that are be bound, kind of living right here on the deck, when you walk aft, you'll see a variety of bunks. And those bunks is where you'd have other people on the ship. You know, you'd have the navigator. You might have the ship's master, the maestre, like the one that's pretty much in charge in there. We have some bunks where the soldiers would be aboard. You have priests who would be aboard. A variety of others, because I said quite a lot of people on this voyage. Obviously, if you go all the way back, you'll see where the captain is. Well, when this ship went ahead and traveled north along the coast, it's for exploration, because in the 16th century, Europeans, they had no idea about how big this coastline extends. They obviously knew about New Spain, you know, the area we're thinking Mexico, Central America. You know, they know a little bit about the coastlines of South America, but north. They knew Baja. They knew that a little bit of that coast, but how far up? No one knew. Maybe if you just go up a little bit up on the coast, maybe you could just do a straight shot to the west and finally get to Japan. Maybe it only took a couple days. They didn't know, and that's what it was all about. He left in the summer of 1542 with 3 ships, the San Salvador, the replica you see here, La Victoria, a supply ship, and the San Miguel, much smaller little navigable boat that could be able to travel up rivers, or if you needed to go ahead, maybe sometimes they would even tow it on the other 2 large ships. Left summer of 1542. By the end of September 28th, 1542, Juan Cabrillo and his crew had sailed into the closed bay. He named it San Miguel. You know it now as San Diego. 60 years later after that, Sebastian Vizcaino renamed it. He thought it was a different place, and he named it San Diego, and that's the name that we still have today. But Cabrillo was the first one to do that. And so when you want to talk about our origin stories, you know, the history of our country or where we are, well, anybody from the East Coast here? I will represent the East Coast then. When I grew up in New York, I hear about history. You read about we want to hear about the Columbus and the Nina Pinta and Santa Maria, or the Mayflower, or the Jamestown settlement. Well, when you think about the Mayflower, that story, that's a lot I read about, or I was told in schools. Well, this ship is like 80 years before that on the West Coast. So for the rest of you, maybe a lot of you are representing the West Coast, that's what the ship is there to kind of represent another version, another perspective of our history. But you can't talk about our origin stories without also talking about the indigenous people who lived here. They're home. Been here for thousands of years. This is their area. So that was the encounters these explorers would have found. Also, it's who's on the ships. Who are on these exploration ships? Well, I said soldiers, sailors, slaves, representing the crown. You have people from different countries. And they'd settle here. It's an immigrant story as well. And that's what this ship represents, and that's what we're here to be able to talk about as well, is our history. And if you want to talk about a California West Coast representing history, well, it's about a Spanish ship with an explorer, Juan Cabrillo, coming to this land as well. So we got a lot of different perspectives, and that's what this heritage tour is about, traveling the Pacific Coast, stopping in these wonderful ports. Anybody here from Morro Bay? First time ever here. This is my day 2. What a beautiful, beautiful town. And this coastline, imagine what it must have been like in the 16th century, seeing these new lands, the Channel Islands as well. When you walk, I've mentioned to pretty much all of you, watch this ladder. You could walk up the ladder facing it, you turn around, you face the ladder as you lay below. You have any questions? Our docents, myself, are here to be able to help out. I heard a few of you already ask immediately about this. It's called a capstan. It's kind of a machine on the ship. Capstan bars are above the table in here where the food is. Run the capstan bars through. You take, you could raise heavy things, like for example, the anchor. The anchor all the way forward, you run the line through, wrap it around, then we'd haul around it, walking around, raising the anchor. You could raise things like the foreyard, or I've used it to help out to raise the entire main yard off the deck when we change the sail aboard here. We leave Monday afternoon. At that moment, we are going to be doing 3 4-day legs, paying passengers are going to be getting the experience to pay to come aboard and be essentially our first passengers sailing on this. There might be some spaces still left. You have information out there, but basically we leave here and we're taking passengers to the Channel Islands and then dropping them off in Oxnard. Leg 2 will be from Avalon out in Catalina, go around Southern Channel Islands, return back to Avalon, and then the last leg is actually sold out, Catalina to San Diego. That's where our home port is. The Maritime Museum of San Diego is the one who built the ship. That's our home port. If you ever get your chance to come down to San Diego, come visit us. We got like a dozen historic ships and submarines, 2 submarines as well. You coming here is helping support our museum, so thank you. You're supporting, I want to thank also our partners, the National Park Service, Cabrillo National Monument. Great place to check out if you're down there. And then also your support, thank you for our host, the Central Coast Maritime Museum. So thanks a lot, everyone. Go explore, see the ship, and if you got any questions, we're here to be able to help you out. So thank you. No clapping, no clapping. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
The ship itself, the original San Salvador, that was able to get as far north as Russian River Sonoma in Alta California, was driven by winter storms and currents back down without successfully finding the route to China they were seeking. The Captain General, Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo, was killed or was injured in a conflict with the Native Americans, the indigenous people in the Channel Islands. He slipped when coming off the ship, breaking either a leg bone or a shoulder or an arm bone. He died from gangrene on January 3rd, 1543. His pilot, Bartolomeo Ferreira, attempted again to go north, got as far as the California-Oregon border before being driven south in a completely unrealistic effort to go that direction. He returned to Navidad, refitted the ships to continue exploration and trade route to Peru, and they sailed into history. The ships were gone, the men were gone, and nothing is known of them to this very day. We want to thank you very much on behalf of the San Diego Maritime Museum and the Morro Bay Maritime Museum for coming aboard today and sharing in the experience of the Pacific Heritage Voyage of the San Salvador, which will be berthed permanently in San Diego.